Hello, welcome to episode 18 of Ministry Shift, and it's our regular look at what it feels like to be ministering during a time of pandemic. And our subject today will be that of shaping for mission, which is a process that's just begun in the diocese, kicked off a couple of weeks ago with various meetings around the diocese and different archdeaconries, looking at ways in which we can create sustainable missional and ministry arrangements across the diocese. And in order to do that, there's some serious thinking to be done, and a programme that draws deaneries and clergy and layfolk into a discussion over the next few months. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce our panel this afternoon. And first of all, I'd like to go to Julia. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Julia, and why you might be interested in the Shaping for Mission process.
Thank you, Matthew, and hello. I'm Julia. I'm a vicar in Purton, which is on the west of Wolverhampton, proudly in Staffordshire, though. I'm Rural Dean of Treesor, and I'm also part of the Direction of Travel Steering Group. So that's me, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Philip Swan.
So in addition to a role to do with World Mission and Companion Links, I've been spending quite a bit of time on interim ministry, which is rather short-term focused work where there are particular issues around transition and challenge. And it's just underlined to me how important that is, given not only pressures, challenges and opportunities, but the particular context we're in. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the insights from that form of ministry is going to apply to this Shaping for Mission process.
And I think I'm right in saying, Philip, that you're one of the deanery facilitators for this.
Yes,
what does that involve?
Yes, so that will be involving the particular kind of oversight and connection with a number of deaneries. And I expect we'll go into some more detail on that later.
Thank you. Lindsay Hall.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Hall. I work in the Discipleship, Vocation and Evangelism department in the diocese. And I'm with Philip and Alex, who you're about to meet, on the core team of Shaping for Mission, and also a deanery facilitator.
Thank you very much. And finally, Alex Woolworth.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I work in the education team at the diocese, but I'm also in the mission team. And I've got a real heart to see how schools and mission can be working together.
And you're also a deanery facilitator.
I am, yes.
For this process. So, Lindsay, I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more about the process. I mean, I've sketched out there that it involves deaneries somehow, that we are thinking about ministry and mission. What's the shape of it? How long is it going to go on for?
So, I mean, obviously, this has emerged partly out of the unusual circumstances of this year, which have made us look in very sharp focus at our finances as a diocese, but also, of course, at our mission and ministry as a church. And one of the things that's been extraordinary about this year is the way in which we've adapted the way we do both mission and ministry really fast. And it's exposed all sorts of challenges and potentials and possibilities. And so we find ourselves now, along with really the rest of the church nationally, in a place where some of our old habits just aren't sustainable. Some of our old patterns, we can't afford them, both in people terms, in financial terms, but also they don't seem to be necessarily that effective in missional terms. And so we have taken the decision to introduce a programme of looking at where we are now and where we want to be. So rather than sort of saying we've got a financial problem, let's make some cuts. In this diocese, we are looking at where we are and thinking about how we could shape ourselves better, both to meet the financial challenge, but more importantly, to meet our kind of future and present missional and ministry challenges. And so the way we're going about that is working with each deanery. And as you've already heard, each deanery gets a facilitator to work with a core team of people from that deanery to think about what's their vision for mission in that particular place. And so our aim is to do this in at least 2 phases. The first phase that we've just started this autumn is to take stock of where we're at and to do some vision setting. That's phase 1, which we hope will be complete by next summer. And phase 2 will be, how do we then map that onto resources and make financial and staffing decisions and some of the difficult stuff that will mean that translating into kind of practicality and into a change in the way we actually do things.
Thank you, Philip. Some of our viewers maybe heard that, and we've mentioned words like ministry and mission a number of times, and they might be thinking, actually, this is really all about money. How would you respond to that kind of genuine kind of concern over these sort of processes?
Well, to acknowledge it is a genuine concern, and it's a sort of almost a knee-jerk response. There's an understandable skepticism, I think, within any institution. I think there's something rather kind of subtle in terms of it being a both-and thing here, because I think we're actually being real about setbacks, constraints, limitations, but we're actually too saying that there's a sort of wider context, almost sometimes under the whole area of stewardship, where we kind of wouldn't get very far if we just looked at money. We say this is a kind of whole life thing, the whole life ministry challenge here, and we perhaps, some people need to be a bit more direct and frank about money. Other people need to be less so, but it's a vital ingredient in the mix.
So Alex, how do we kind of make sure we don't get dragged into just thinking about what we haven't got, in a sense, in terms of money and resources, and how do we keep that focused, do you think, missional and engaged?
I think that's a really important question, because as Christians, we do need to weigh up the cost of anything. The Bible does tell us that, but it also tells us to seek ye first the kingdom of God. So I think to start with prayer is really important, to seek God's will and to say, look, Lord, there's a broken world out there. How can we join you in your mission? What are you calling us to do? How can we help with this broken world? And I think once we start to seek God's will and we seek the real need, and to open our eyes and to look at the need and the pain and the tears of the world that are looking back at the church, then I think we start to put things in a perspective and see money as, yes, it is important, but there's something far more important than money driving this as well.
Thank you. It is going to be a kind of subtle, as Philip described it, kind of interplay between the kind of constraints that we do actually face and our faith in God who provides. Julia, I know that you, as Rural Dean, are quite excited about the process, the prospect of it, but you're also conscious, I guess, for yourself and for colleagues, that this is coming at a time when many clergy are perhaps feeling a little bit frazzled and tired. Again, how do you think we can kind of look after each other, in a sense, through all this?
Yeah, that's also a great question. And I think, I've been reflecting on this a bit personally over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I think one of the things has really encouraged me is just the honesty and the transparency that the diocese have had, particularly around finances. And I think that's really obviously highly commendable. And I think that transparency and honesty needs to carry on as a foundation for all the conversations, all the prayer, all the thinking that's going to go on, really. And I'll put my hand up and say, when I first heard about this, I was just thinking, oh gosh, here's another piece of work. Here's another job to do. I'm quite a busy parish priest, like lots of parish priests and lots of other ministers and lay folks in the church. And I just thought, oh gosh, how am I going to give to this? And as I've begun to talk to folks in the deanery, there is, of course, a degree of skepticism and cynicism. And I think it's actually really good to hear that and own up to that. And for that to be heard, those questions and concerns are important. But as I listened to a presentation a few weeks ago, actually, I was really convicted. I think it was Julie Jones asked the question, how are we going to show up differently to this process? And initially I was thinking, it's a bit management speaky kind of question. But as I thought about it, I was again really convicted, and without over spiritualizing it, I kind of thought, if I do believe that for some weird reason God has ordained me to be Rural Dean right now and put me in this position, then actually I'm meant to take a role in this. And I was really pulled up short, saying I need to give time to this, I need to give it some sort of priority in my diary, and to obviously encourage the deanery in the same way, and just to say, yes, we're busy, but actually we have the most incredible opportunity to be creative, to be prayerful, to dream, to seek God's vision in a way we've not had before, really, and to not to see it as another thing to do, but to get back to thinking, what is church, and how can we be and do church into the future. So I've got quite excited about it. It's still a challenge for the diary, of course it is, but I think trying to see God's hand in it, and being honest is really important. Yeah. Thank
you. That's really helpful, Julia. I mean, if I could just change the subject a little and ask you, Lindsay, why deaneries? I mean, as long as I've been ordained, people have been, and probably longer than that, have been wondering what's the point of deaneries, and how effective are they, and all the rest of it. But I mean, this is a real, I guess, a kind of a vote of confidence in the deanery. But why do we choose to focus on deaneries?
I think there's probably a few reasons for that. I mean, what Julia was just talking about was the sense of vocation in a process like this, of sort of working out who you are called to be amidst this time of change, and with the kind of challenge of how we change into the future. And I think that's the same for deaneries, really. The challenge is for us as church to say, who are we called to be here and now, and in the months and years to come? And to perhaps put aside the question of who have we been in the past a little bit. And I think deaneries are a good workable unit to explore some of that sort of question. So for one parish to do it, you haven't always got the diversity and the kind of complementarity, the challenge that comes from your neighbours. For a whole diocese to do it, I mean, and especially for us, we're a big diocese, one end to the other is very hard to get a conversation going. So there's a real practicality about the size of deaneries as a unit. And the fact that they exist in our structures, that lots of people have invested time in them being a good kind of collegial group of parishes in particular. But I think it's a real opportunity for us to say, what else can deaneries be? And I tend to think of them as just carving up the diocese geographically. I know it's by parish, but actually what else is in the deanery? What chaplaincies have you got there? What schools, what big institutions, what fresh expressions, and how can we have a more holistic sense of what Anglican presence is in this particular geographical area? And I think our deaneries are a good way to do that.
Thank you. And both Alex and Philip, you're both going to be deanery facilitators. But I know, Alex, for example, in your case, you've got a clear interest in schools and fresh expression too, as a leader of the Connect 2 in Brown Edge. I mean, do you see how is it going to be easy for schools, chaplaincies, fresh expressions to engage with a process focused on deaneries?
I would really hope that schools were given a voice within this, and for schools to take a responsibility as well. We can't just be saying we want this to happen. We need to be part of the process. We need to be visionary. We need to be offering vision and ideas as well. So I would hope that the deaneries and the schools could be working together to listen to one another, to sit down and to talk about what mission can look like within our schools, but also how schools can be involved in mission within our deaneries as well.
So there's a real communication challenge in a way, and a challenge to all of us to see this as our responsibility, not someone else's.
Definitely.
I mean, if I could just end then with you, Philip. I mean, you organised a diocesan prayer day, and which kind of underlines the importance. I mean, how do we pray for this process?
Well, the diocese actually has got a very well-worded vision prayer that remarkably, I think, summarises the challenge, particularly to be outward looking. And I think that's one of the tremendous difficulties. Under pressure, we kind of retreat. And yet this is an initiative that is saying, how can we work together? How can we see where God is already at work? And how can we actually change the DNA of what is in many ways quite tired structures into something that has that real freshness, and hence the whole vocabulary, I think, of Shaping for Mission is so well pitched.
Thank you very much. we're going to conclude there, but just to say thank you to our panelists, to Julia, Philip, Lindsay and Alex. And this is my last show for a while. Pete Bates will be taking up the anchor role next week, when we'll be returning to the subject of Christmas. Please do recommend Ministry Shift to your friends, comment on Facebook, and until we're next on air, goodbye.